This is a question that I've gotten a ton recently, which is, what are my favorite shoes for 2-hour long runs? And yeah, specifically that number, 2 hours, because there's a lot of great adaptations that happen as runners once we hit that 2-hour mark, specifically with our aerobic fitness. And so over the past few months, I've used a lot of these plated marathon racing shoes for my long runs. But as you heard me talking about in the long run video I did with the Novablast 4 here, I also quit plated training shoes for most of 2023 and did a lot of runs in lower stack, not like the Novablast 4 here, but in lower stack non-plated shoes to help build some leg strength. So in this video, I'm going to pull 5 of my favorite long run shoes, talk you through what I like about them, and also what you should be looking for in a long run shoe based on what type of runner you are and where you're at in your training, because there are tons of great options here. There's new long run shoes, new plated racers, new comfort oriented shoes coming out, seems like every week now. So lots of great choices, but it's really going to depend on what you're looking for. So I'm going to take these Novablast 4 here out for a run, and then we'll get right to it. All right, guys, we just finished a nice smooth 12 miler in the Asics Novablast 4. I now have about 80 miles on this guy, and after I did that 23 mile or 22 mile long run on Sunday, I got a bunch of questions, emails about what are my favorite long run shoes specifically for that 2-hour long run. Now, if you guys have been watching this channel and you watch some of my videos about how to run a faster half marathon that outline my training for my 119 PR, a lot of that was around aerobic mileage, getting our base up, increasing the time that we're spending on feet, and specifically 2 key runs during the week. You got that recovery run, so making sure that after every hard effort, we're still getting that mileage and turning over the legs, and then the 2-hour long run on the weekends. So today, what I wanted to do is take you through my 5 favorite long run shoes and also outline what I look for in a long run shoe. And there's a reason I'm not going to title this video the best long running shoes, because I don't believe these are the absolute best objectively, but they are my favorite, and all these 5 share some characteristics. So the first main thing I look for in a long run shoe is stack height. I do not love to use shoes under 35 millimeters typically for long runs. And if you take a look at this guy here, New Balance Rebel V4, done a ton of videos since I got this shoe. I absolutely love this thing. It's got a nice soft bouncy foam. It's a mix of EVA and PIBA. It's a really great shoe. However, when I did my long run in it, it was fine, but it's just not what I want to be reaching for week after week if I'm going to be cranking out 20 milers, 22 milers, or wherever you are at in your training. And so 2 hours is the mark that I shoot for in a long run, because that's where there's been proven to be certain adaptations that happen in our body. And so last year I worked my way up to 16 miles, which was about the 2-hour mark. And now this year I'm doing more 20, 22, getting up past 2.5 hours. And so for you, based on where you're at in your training, long runs do not have to be 2 hours. It could just be your longest run of the week, but typically you're still gonna want something comfortable with a little bit more stack height if you're going to be buying a new shoe for a long run. And that is something I wanna mention. If you are comfortable already doing hour-long runs in a shoe like the New Balance Rebel V4 or the Nike Pegasus, or I had a friend, Julie, who emailed me this week and said her brother is gonna be training for a half marathon and he's using the Nike Invincible. He does all his runs in that. And what shoe should he get for long runs? And if that's the case for you, if you have a shoe you're super comfortable in doing hour runs, hour 15-minute runs, you probably don't need to go out and buy a new shoe to do your first few 2-hour long runs if you're comfortable in that shoe. Now, if you do experience some aches and pains, or you think you're gonna want a little bit more protection, that's where getting a new shoe in the mix can be helpful. So first thing I look for is stack height. Second thing I look for is a little bit more stability. Now, that's something all of these shoes are gonna share. And one of the big trends we see in the market right now is a little bit of wider bases out here on the bottom, which is really nice for long runs. It means as we get up to that 90-minute mark, 2-hour mark, and our form degrades a little bit, we start mashing the heel or feel a little bit weaker because we've been on our feet for 2 hours. These bases can save us. We don't need to be heroes and run in super minimalist narrow shoes all the time. There are a place for those shoes, not this, but those shoes like the Topo Cyclone 2, as I said in my video earlier this week. There are a place for those shoes in the rotation, but for me and for many of us, it's not gonna be for running that 2-hour run every week. Now, the third key thing I look for in a long run shoe that all of these share is comfort. You have to be comfortable if you're gonna be on your feet for 2 hours. And while some of these shoes that I'm gonna recommend here are more oriented towards speed, so if you're gonna be doing a workout in your long run, they all are decently comfortable for me, and they all are shoes that I could use on a shorter run and be decently comfortable. So with that, I'm gonna grab my box of shoes, 5 shoes stuffed in a box, my favorites. Actually, it's probably gonna be 6 because 2 are tied, and we'll pop out in the backyard. I will take you through all the details of these 5 shoes. I'm super excited. Let's get into it. All right, guys, so I wanted to make sure we presented a range of options in different styles of shoes, different prices, and also different brands. So first up here, we have the Saucony Triumph 20. This is the Run Shield edition, and this guy was my Christmas present from Charlie about 2 years ago, Christmas 2022, and look at the outsole, it's still going strong, other than back here. I chewed through that pretty good. But this is the shoe that I used all in the end of 2022, beginning of 2023 for my 2-hour long runs. I took this up to 18 miles. I took it up to 20 miles a few times. And this Power Run Plus foam here is an absolute monster. Now, this is in the new Saucony Ride 17. I'm going to be testing that one soon. So let me know what you want to see the Ride 17 compared to. And the reason why I'm so excited to test the Ride 17, I actually wasn't planning on doing that, but this guy is getting up there, and I missed the feel of this Power Run Plus foam, so we're bringing that in the house. Now, depending on how you run in it and how big you are, how much force you put down, it can be soft. It can also feel a little bit more structured. It's not firm at all, but look at this here. It is a little bit of a denser foam, a ton of impact absorption, and as you're rolling along through the later stages of those miles, it keeps its balance and its feeling for the entirety of the run. And now there's some shoes that I've used recently, like the Asics Novablast, that tend to change character throughout a run, and depending how long I'm out on my feet, they start to feel better or worse. This guy feels consistent for every type of run, every distance, and it is great value at $100 in most places right now. So for that, you're going to be getting 37 millimeters of stack in the heel, 27 millimeters of stack in the forefoot for a 10 millimeter drop. That is going to be the one downside of the Triumph 20 here, is that the drop is a little bit higher than what a lot of folks prefer and are used to. So if you are more of a forefoot striker or even a heel striker, it can get a little bit in the way. The heel is pretty chunky, but for long runs, I don't mind having that extra support. And then there's a nice slight roll and bounce up here in the front. Now, the reason we see this guy on sale for $100 is because the current version of the shoe is the Triumph 21, which was just an upper update. And my rule is I will never buy an upper update. I only like to buy the shoes that are a complete redesign. And so we didn't buy the 21, and Marshall's actually had this for $65 recently. And so if you look at the upper here, and this is the Run Shield edition, so the upper is going to be a little bit different than the standard version, but this is a waterproof material. There's tons of padding out here in the back, and we do have that structured heel counter. And one of the other main issues with the shoe, other than the 10 millimeter drop, was that the heel lockdown could be a little bit funky, but I figured out how to work with it. You just got to make sure you tie the laces correctly. This is one of those shoes where you got to do a little bit of finicky work with the laces to get it right. But if you are looking for a great deal on a long run shoe, the best value on a long run shoe, and one of the most versatile shoes out there, this is it. I also wanted to highlight it first because if you're not sure what shoe to buy, you can't go wrong buying this shoe. For $65 at Marshall's or $100, this is one of the best value deals out there. It can do every type of work imaginable. I've even done workouts in this. I've done recovery runs with this. It's comfortable enough for walking, not the most stable due to a little bit of a thinner heel back here width-wise, but overall, super comfortable shoe. Great choice to be on your feet for more than 2 hours. All right, guys, next up here, we have the Asics Novablast 4. This is my first experience with the Novablast and my second experience with Asics. I previously only used the Gel Nimbus. Now, I will say straight off the bat, the one downside of the shoe is the rubber. There's a lot of coverage, but it is not super grippy. Last night, I took it out for a stroller run in a little bit of rain, and Reevesy Boy and I were slipping and sliding all over the place. But the reason why I showed you the bottom of this, again, is it is going to provide a ton of stability and support. So if you are a runner who needs a little bit more stability but don't want to go for a full-blown stability shoe, this is going to be a great choice. And so if we just compare these two side by side, both of these are more on the max cushion side, but you can see that the Novablast is considerably wider out here, a lot more noticeable too if we flip them down to the bottom. But you're also getting a nice structured, firmer foam in here for when you're on your feet for 90 minutes plus. It is a very comfortable shoe. Now, I have only done 80 miles in the shoe, so this comes with a little bit of an asterisk, but I want to highlight this because at $140, this is competing in the daily trainer segment. And so far, this is the best one I've tested for long runs. Shoes like the Pegasus, Velocity Nitro 3, even the New Balance Rebel, New Balance 880 V14, they're all priced at around this mark, and you are getting a lot more foam and a lot more comfort for a long run in this shoe than any of the other shoes that are priced at this mark. Now, the foam isn't going to be the most naturally bouncy right out of the box or really ever, especially if we're thinking about comparing this to that Triumph foam. But the trade-off is it is very supportive and it feels better the longer you go. So I took this up to 3 hours over the weekend, and I'm glad I did because it was one of my favorite run experiences in a shoe recently. It just has a ton of comfort, and you get over 33 millimeters in the forefoot here. You get 34 millimeters in the forefoot here, which is more stacked than we see in the heel of the Rebel. The heel of the Rebel is 30 millimeters. So a lot of foam, a lot of comfort, a little bit firmer, but that firmness is what makes it a nice option for the later stages of the run. It starts to soften up a little bit, but you'll not be getting any bottoming out. And so this is the one I'd recommend if you're a bigger runner, need a little bit more stability, like a firmer ride, or you want something at that $140 price point. Now, I know a lot of you guys are fans of the Asics Superblast, which is similar to this, but uses a race foam. It also has a taller stack, but it's non-plated. I haven't tested the Superblast yet, but also this is $60 cheaper. And these first two shoes I'm highlighting here, both the Triumph and this, these are really good value at 140 bucks. This runs almost like a plated shoe. I prefer this to something like the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. It's not going to be the best for speed work, but for any run where you're going to be on your feet for an hour plus, this guy's a good bet. All right, now next up here, I want to highlight two shoes which are tied for me, and they are both in the plated training segment at about $160. This guy is $140 on sale, but usually $180, but you can find it for discount. And then we also have the Adidas Boston 12 here. This retails for $160. Now, these guys are two sides of the plated training shoe segment. So first, let's dive into the New Balance SC Trainer here. This is a comfort-oriented plated training shoe. It has a full-length carbon fiber plate, which is unique in the plated training market. A lot of these have plastic plates or the glass rods or a carbon composite plate. This is the real deal carbon fiber. And then you also have this soft fuel cell foam. So the fuel cell foam in this generation of shoes is a super critical TPU and EVA blend. So they blend a foam TPU, which is a little bit more resistant to heat changes, a little bit higher energy return, so more bounce, with EVA, which tends to have more durability, a little bit more structure and support, which make this a really nice bouncy option. It is super soft, which is why they add the full-length carbon fiber plate. But what you're getting out of this guy is a shoe that just keeps rolling along. It's not going to be the fastest feeling. It's not the lightest weight feeling. The upper actually isn't the most comfortable. It doesn't have the most padding, but the midsole experience here is awesome. So if I were going to be on my feet for more than 2 hours and I weren't concerned with my pace, I would be going for a shoe like the SC Trainer V2. And now the stability is pretty good back here. It's not going to be as wide and stable as something like the Novablast. The Novablast might be the most stable neutral running shoe that I've tested, but it is still a really nice option if you need a bit more support than other plated shoes offer. And again, guys, we're going to be getting a lot of stack here. It's up near 40 millimeters in the forefoot, and you got a big rocker. This is one of the most rockered shoes I think we got out here today. So really nice rolling experience that is super easy to run in. And now for the Boston 12, the other side of the coin. This is a little bit firmer. So with this, you have two different foams. So on the bottom here, you got Light Strike 2.0. This is a standard EVA. This is where that firmness is coming from. It does break in and soften up. As you can see here, this guy is nice and soft now as I'm pushing it in, and this is a super comfortable shoe for me now. But for a lot of runners who land more out in the heel or who don't put as much force into it, this shoe isn't as enjoyable. But Light Strike Pro here also takes some time to break in. So this is the racing foam that you see on the top. It's super bouncy. It's super fun when you run faster up in the forefoot, and you can put some power down into the shoe. And so this is the training shoe that I'd recommend for long runs. If you are going to be doing marathon pace workouts, if you're going to be doing threshold or tempo style long runs where you're doing faster pace pickups, this shoe is an amazing tool for blending speed and endurance. So even in the construction of the shoe, right? The bottom foam is more for the endurance, the top foam is more for the speed. And this is one of the lower stack shoes we have out here actually. This is in the mid 30s in the back here, but it rides a little bit taller than that because of all the foam you're getting in the midsole and also because of the rod setup. So the rods here are Adidas's version of a plate. These are the glass fiber energy rods. I've broken it in so it is a little bit more flexible, I think, when we first started out with this shoe. But in general, those rods are going to give the shoe a little bit more stability. Now, the weak point of this guy is going to be the upper. So upper is not the most comfortable. It is very thin. You don't have a lot of padding up here, and even if we compare it to the SC Trainer V2, which I mentioned wasn't the most padded upper, you can see the SC Trainer V2 has a lot more comfort and padding in the upper. The other thing is the lockdown of this guy can be a little bit funky. So I always wear padded socks, and I make sure to do that, especially with this. That fixes most of the issue. And then some of our friends here on the channel said they have replaced the laces here to give a slightly softer lace setup, and that doesn't bite down on the foot. And now you can see the tongue here is super thin. So that's one of the reasons that you might get some lace bite with this shoe. But all of those issues can be forgiven for me because this thing is an absolute tank. Aside from long runs, I've done some of my fastest mile repeats of this year in it. Last year, that was the Mach 5 for me. This year, it's the Boston 12. It can do anything for me other than recovery runs. I wouldn't want to go super slow in the shoe. It's not the most comfortable for that. But for faster daily efforts and for long runs, it's great. Taking it up to 20 a few times. I would even run a marathon in this thing. So that's something to consider too. If you want something that you could train in and race in, Boston 12 is a really good choice. The durability on this thing is fantastic as well. I have nearly 300 miles on it, and I will typically chew through these outsoles here, and you can see that the Boston 12 outsole is barely even touched at about 280 miles here, which is just absolutely absurd. So good job, Boston 12. I need to get some more miles in this thing soon. All right, guys, so next up here, going up in price, we have a $225 marathon racing shoe. This is the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3. This is what I raced the 2022 Charlotte Marathon in, and this is what I have done a lot of great 16 to 20 mile long runs in, especially last summer when I was doing my 16 mile long runs, and before I quit plated training shoes, I was ripping off a lot of those guys in this shoe. And now in here, you are going to see again that up near 40 millimeters of stack here, and the foam we're getting is called Power Run PB. It is very soft. It's even softer now because we're up near 300 miles, but it's got a nice bounce to it. You can see all these little beads throughout the foam here. They're expanded during the manufacturing process. That's going to give it a really nice pop. And so with this shoe, the main feature that characterizes the midsole other than the foam is the big rocker here. And in the version 4 of the shoe, they minimized and reduced the rocker a little bit. It doesn't feel as curved here. It doesn't feel like it's rolling you along as much. This guy just pops you along at any pace. And that's one of the reasons it's great for long runs too, because unlike a lot of other marathon racing shoes, this guy is a little bit more comfortable for slower training style paces. It's not as wide as some of the racing shoes are getting these days, and the heel doesn't extend as far back, but it still has a decent degree of stability, and at $225 is a really good choice. So one of the interesting things is with the version 4 coming out, they didn't drop the price on this thing yet, so I'm not sure what their plans are for it and whether it's going to go on sale or not. I so far prefer the version 3, so I would pick this up while you can. Still got to get some more miles in the version 4, but this guy feels a little bit faster and more aggressive. So like the Boston 12, I'd go for this if you want something that you can train in and race in. The durability is great. This is another shoe where we have almost 300 miles on here, and you can see the bottom's in decent shape. We're starting to wear into some of this PIBA here, and this PIBA race foam tends to not be the most durable in general, so not a knock against Saucony. It's just tends to be how these compounds evolve over time, and it might have lost a little bit of the pop at 300 miles, but the comfort is still there. Now, this is a very tight fit, feels a little bit snugger and shorter than some of these other shoes, so that's something to mention. If you are not a fan of narrow toe boxes, Pro 3 probably not going to work for you. But if you want that rock and you want that roll and you're ready to rip some pace during training and potentially race a marathon in a shoe as well, this is a great choice for 2-hour long runs, especially if you're going to be working a lot of marathon pace into those efforts. All right, guys, last here, we got the Big Daddy sitting at, and we got to make sure it's all prim and proper, tuck in the laces, sitting at $300, the Diadora Gara Carbon. And I've been calling this the Diadora Gara. I think most of us have, but they want you to call it the Gara Carbon so that you don't forget this is their first marathon racing shoe, and they got the full length carbon fiber plate in here. And so they've been telling us this plate in the Gara Carbon has been manufactured or developed or designed by Ducati, a partnership with Ducati or the folks who make Ducati. And so they put a lot of consideration into the shoe at the running event. They told me that this is something they worked on for 3 to 4 years. They didn't want to rush a product to market. And you can tell they took their time with this because every single detail of it is well thought out. The upper is this matrix material. And now I'm still not sure exactly why they put this material on here, but it is a nice material. It seems like it's going to be very durable. It has this camping chair feel almost. It's really high quality. I'm sure it's going to last a long time. The laces are great as well. They went with these Vaporfly 2 style laces that have the nubs. They lock down really nicely. They got a good degree of padding out here in the back. And I was comparing the shoe to the Hoka Mach 6 when I did the Mach 6 versus Novablast 4 comparison. And this shoe actually had more padding than the Mach 6. But the star of the show is not any of that stuff I mentioned. It is the Anima PBX foam. And now any brand out there can go source PBA from Arkema or Pebax, slap it in their shoe. I don't know what they did with this to make it different, but this is one of the best formulations, one of the best variants of PBA outside of ZoomX that I've tried. And now you got the Saucony style PBA here. This is the same thing that Tier is putting in the Valkyrie Elite Carbon, which is nice, but we've been used to the feel of this. I think we're a little bit spoiled at how this Saucony Power Run PB feels. This is giving something a little bit new, a little bit different. It's almost like a lighter version of the Adidas Light Strike Pro here. It's not as dense, and if you watch me push it in, you can see how soft it is, but it doesn't give you that super soft sinking in feeling like something like the New Balance SC Trainer Fuel Cell might, where in this guy, as you run along, you get that sink. You don't get as much pop, which is why they add the full-length carbon fiber plate in here. Now with this, you get that sink briefly, but then you get a really quick pop, a really nice flip off the toe, and the carbon fiber plate in here, I don't know if it's the curve of it or what they've done, how aggressive the rocker is up in the front, this little spring up here, but it has a super fast feeling where you just fire right off the forefoot. And so every single run I've done with this shoe has been great. I did a workout where I took it down to about 5:15 pace, which is faster than 5K pace for me, and it felt great there. It felt great for a 22-mile long run. This is probably one of the most versatile shoes because even standing in it and lacing it up, it feels more like a regular sneaker. For $300, you're getting a ton of value. Now, whether it is faster than something like the Vaporfly or Adidas Adios Pro 3, I'm not sure. What I can tell you is that Diadora, and now they're not putting this on their website, which I'm not sure why not, but Diadora told me that this shoe was lab tested to be faster than every carbon fiber racing shoe on the market up until the Adidas Evo Pro, because that wasn't out for them to test it. And so I'm not sure exactly what the metrics were, but the words they used were more efficient. And now on their website, all they're saying is lab tested. They're not using that in the copy. So I'm not sure if there's someone with their legal team that held it up, but that is what they told me at the running event. And now the other thing you're going to be getting in this shoe is lots of rubber coverage. And so if you take a look out here, this is a decent amount, a decent thickness too. And so they are trying to make this a more durable shoe for $300. The curious thing though is that they didn't extend the rubber all the way out in the back. I do wish they gave us a little bit more rubber back here. That's something I wish these brands would do. They put so much rubber on the forefoot, and even aggressive forefoot strikers aren't going to be using this whole pad all the time. So if you want to save weight, you could add a little bit more on the back here for wear. Now, $300 is steep, and we've yet to see how the durability is. But if you want something for your marathon training long runs that's going to be super comfortable but also fast, that's this guy. It works well for heel striking. I mean, look at this big chunky heel you got out in the back. They put a lot of consideration into this. Again, very similar to what we see in the Novablast with how the foam extends out in the back. It's not going to be as wide here, but the stability was pretty decent. And even though it's not the widest, you got that carbon fiber plate in there to make it a little bit more stable. So yeah, a bit of a tough sell at $300, but I don't think anyone who buys this is going to be displeased with it. It is a really fun shoe. I might even use it to race my marathon. And for being on your feet for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and looking good while doing it, that's what the Gara is for. And it's not just looks, guys. This thing can rip. All right, guys, so to wrap up here, I want to do a little summary. So we got the climbing gym in the back. So I typically do not love shoes with fewer than 35 millimeters of foam back here. And I think most of you out there will be happier with a taller stack shoe for your 2-hour long runs. Now, if I were to choose a shoe below 30 millimeters or at 30 millimeters, I would go with the Rebel here. I took it up to 23 and it was decent for that. However, I don't think most of you are going to prefer that. So where we'll start, the favorites is here, Saucony Triumph. If you want a good deal on a long run shoe, go for this guy. Asics Novablast 4 at that $140 price point. This is giving you a ton of value, ton of stack, a ton of comfort, a little bit on the firmer side, but really good for bigger runners. Adidas Boston 12. Now, if you want something for faster workouts for long runs, if you're training for a marathon, doing some Jack Daniel style workouts, this is going to be the best plated training shoe in that $160 to $180 price range. And then if you want something a little bit softer, still in that plated training $160 to $180 price range, that's where I'd go for the New Balance SC Trainer V2. These could also pair together. So if you want something for relaxed days, relaxed long runs, that's the SC Trainer V2. If you want something for those faster training runs, that's the Adidas Boston 12. Now, getting into the carbon fiber racing market, Endorphin Pro 3, this is still my top pick out of all the shoes that I've tested this year. This guy is still my favorite one for long runs, and I think it's the one that's gonna work the best for a lot of you out there for long runs and for racing. We're still waiting for someone to come and knock it off here. Tier Valkyrie Elite is also a really good shoe. That one is a more niche product. It's engineered a little bit more for bigger runners. So this is what I think most of you guys will prefer the most. And then if you want to drop $300, if you want the best of the best for training and for racing, and you want to try something fun, something different, that's going to be the Diadora Gara. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I will be back tomorrow with another video. Drop all of your questions about these guys in the comments below, and I'll see you tomorrow.